It is with a great deal of pleasure that I introduce Mary and Tom Garry, Reverend Doctors Mary and Tom Garry, who are huge elders in our church community.
Nothing to do with my size.
Nothing to do with your size. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
The size of your heart.
The size of your heart. Beautifully said. The size of their hearts, because their hearts are immense, my friends. And we are in for a treat, for a deep exploration into the dynamics of Jesus and Christianity and the humanity of Christianity. This is an incredible topic that I know will touch our deepest awarenesses and bring us to a newer and wonderfully deeper spiritual understanding of what it means. And in order for these two amazing people to do that, we first have to get grounded. It may have been a busy, chaotic day for you. It may have been very intense. It may have been very, scattered. You may have had a lot of responsibilities to do. So we are going to offer the opportunity for you today to ground, to take a nice deep breath, and to know that we are together in this circle, in this wisdom circle, led by our two beloved Tom and Mary. And we have a tradition on our educational programs at the Universal Church of the Master, and that is this. We light the candle, and the candle is a symbol of our light and also a symbol of our connection to the universe and to Great Spirit. And it is also in green in special honor of Mary and Tom, because that is a color of grounding. So we invite you, as we share this candle and as we light this candle, to know that your feet are on the ground. Feel your body relax. Just allow your body to relax and be in this present moment. Give yourself that amazing opportunity to breathe deeply and intentionally, and to feel your energy coming from the top of your head through every cell, every part of your body, and down to the earth, where it is grounded, where you are connected to the earth in this moment. As we light the light for all who walk this path, we light this light for all who have a connection to the earth, and for all that are opening their minds and hearts to explore and to deepen their awareness of the humanity that is in each and every one of us, and the exploration for and with Jesus and what it meant for him to walk on the earth. So I'm going to invite you to just be with yourself for a moment. And I'd like you to go to a very wonderful place. And this place is a place where Jesus has walked. Many holy people, many spiritual people have walked that journey of healing, that journey of awareness. And sometimes it can be a lonely journey. And so have you, my friends, walked that journey. And if you can, just allow yourself to know that you are walking that journey with many people on their spiritual quest. You are not alone. And if you happen to meet maybe another spiritual warrior on your path, just acknowledge them, for they have come to be with you in this beautiful place and time. We come to meet you. We come to greet you. We come to open up our hearts. We come today. We come to meet you. We come to greet you. We come with open hearts. We come together. We come to meet you, meet you, meet you. We come to greet you. We come with hearts open. We come together, together,
Janet, thank you, thank you, thank you.
So we welcome our wonderful Mary and Tom.
Well, there is not many places that we're happier and enjoy sharing our experiences and our thoughts than with UCM. We've been, well, so you were ordained in 1980, right? So that's 80, 90, 0, 10, 20. Ooh, long time, Papa. You've been in the ministry for a long time. And when I was looking through things to kind of prepare, I would thought, not only do I want to talk and will I talk about Jesus and how his influence has spread and how he has touched so many. And of course, you know, me, I believe his mother is active on this earth plane as well, and to help us grow. But in addition to that, as Tom and I were talking, Tom was saying to me, how do you know you're on the right path, Mary? How do you know what you're reaching for is something that's going to be helpful to you? And I said, Tom, I remember now, Tom has sponsored over 50 people. You've been in the business for over 50 years and you've sponsored over 50 people, you busy thing, you. And I said, what did you do when you interviewed those people? And so he has a wonderful style, you know, and so we decided to do the class together tonight. And I'm going to, you know, just like on television or wherever they do it, I'm going to ask Tom questions that we already kind of know the answers to, but he gives us a wonderful twist on it. So if you're okay with that, And I
I'm
hope you
fine.
are, because that's what you said before I let you out of the car. I'm going to ask you questions like you might ask a student, and you can also step in and say, Mary, you missed this.
Mhm.
Okay, that deal.
Well,
We got a
let me
deal.
start by one of the first questions I ask when I'm getting to know somebody as a prospective student minister. I need to know a little bit about them. It helps me make presentations to them. And so first question is usually the same. Please tell me something about how you grew up spiritually. What spiritual practices was there? Was it an organized religion? How did you start going there? How long did you attend? Tell me some of the attitudes and opinions that you had as a youngster learning about that faith. And for most of us, it would be a faith that had Jesus at the center of its Christian teaching. So that would give us some very specific parameters to start with learning about the life of Jesus and understanding what our relationship was to the Christed one.
That's great. I remember one of the questions you asked me was, are you still active in that religion, and how did you leave it? And because sometimes how you leave a religion impacts your ability to move into another spiritual community, or things that you think, I surely don't want this in my my new belief system, or my new, because for me, of course, I left I left the church. Well, kind of the church left me, because Catholics don't believe in divorce, and I was one of those divorced women that you got involved with, and but in addition to that, I became disillusioned, and I think sometimes that happens to us. We become disillusioned with a spiritual system, or a belief system, and we tend to move away from it then. That's always a bit of a challenge. How do you help people to reconnect if they've left a religion with unhappiness, so to speak? How do you get that door open again?
Well, some dissatisfaction is frequently part of the human condition. So when we view something like that, take a look at the body of teaching or the group of people that are assembling for religious expression, we're going to find a great variety in what it is that we vision and what we meet. But it's important that it's consistent with who we are and what our beliefs can embrace. And in this case, when I came to the Universal Church of the Master, I knew people who were and had been ministers in that church for quite a number of years. And they were people for whom I had great respect. And I knew that they could be my companions on that spiritual path, or they could be my teacher. And I actually utilized as many people as I could as resource people to teach me what this faith was about, and also where I would be within it. And those answered some of the initial questions that I had. And it helped me later on when I was interviewing as a sponsoring minister, others, as I knew what some of the questions I came with. And it was just logical that others would have the same questions.
Uh-huh. One of the things I personally, I was not, Tom was ordained, and it took me 8 years to come around before I was ready to step into the church. And one of the things that allowed me to feel like I could make that step, besides everything I had seen you do, was the fact that there's such flexibility in the dogma. I think that was meaningful to me. Is that I didn't have to paint with the same brush that everybody painted with, you know. And I think for me, I had to learn that growing as a spiritual person didn't always require one more piece of information, that I had to get out of here to get into here so that I could really make a connection with the divine. And you just kind of have to be ready for that. It was like, it's one thing to understand it in the abstract, but it's another thing, especially if you started life as a head person, thinking person, as opposed to an intuitive person. Were there others like that you encountered, or?
Well, our spiritual searching can only take us so far.
Uh-huh.
And then we have to open to our own faith and belief system and know that if we are a true seeker of those answers, then we will find the information that we need.
Uh-huh.
And as we do, we will have more empowerment in terms of our understanding. And that's what happened with my learning about the Universal Church of the Master. And it also, I think, is what has helped many another person. They could go at their own pace, and they didn't have to rush their training.
Mm-hmm.
We set it at a pace that would be comfortable.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Look, I wrote some questions down because I was afraid I'd forget. So I'm not disappearing from the. So I guess one of the questions I heard you ask, and I've asked myself so many times, and I would hope that each person at home and here with us would take just a couple of seconds to say to themselves, am I clear that I believe life is purposeful? You know, saying, I think if you believe that life has a spiritual purpose, not a financial purpose or a glamour purpose, but a spiritual purpose, I think it changes your energy somewhat. What are your thoughts on that?
I think we have like the loneliness of a long distance runner.
Wow.
We can have a sprinter, or we can have somebody who just sits down on the starting line. and that race is different for each one of those people because they're bringing different stuff to it. Well, so it is with anything that we learn. When it's new to us, we want to jump into the deep water right away frequently and learn all we can and have answers to our questions as they come to us. You did that when you started studying with me for the ministry.
Yeah.
And I tried not to give you any more than you were asking for in terms of your involvement of your understanding,
Uh-huh.
because I didn't want it to be my understanding.
I
It
know.
needed to be yours.
You were good.
Thank
I
you.
stuck around for a long time.
Uh-huh.
So you do believe life is purposeful, spiritually purposeful.
I do.
And people in the room? Yes, good.
Yes.
And I hope you at home are thinking that and nodding the same way too, because I think you have to come before you can. My viewpoint, before you can really gain and grow on the trip up the mountain, you have to believe that there's something worthwhile at the top. You know, we always have said part of our belief is that there are many paths up the mountain, not a single right path that you have to get on. And but a path you have to have. You have to say, not only do I believe there's a God, whatever that God may be or look like, or, you know, an androgynous being from another world, who knows? I don't have to know. I have to know, for me, Mary, I have to know that there is a purposeful being who created a place for us to grow and instilled in us being all the peoples that people the earth, a sense of that greaterness. Is that a word? I don't know if that's a
That's
word.
fine. That'll do.
Because if we couldn't trust in that, it would be very hard to anchor your or point your light into vagueness if you didn't think there was something at the top of the mountain worth looking at. So I think we want to reinforce that in ourselves. And I'm going to ask different people to share their different thoughts on how they manage their spiritual gifts. Because I think, you know, when I was doing my early studies, I was of the opinion that we all come in with a spiritual gift. And a lot of people say, no, not me. I didn't come in with a spiritual gift. Yeah, you did. I think sometimes you come in with some abilities. You just have certain things that you have. That I call that self-grown. And then there's talent. And you work on talent. You develop your talents. You learn something and do something with them. So I think you do have that gift. And one of the things that I'd like us to talk about in our time before we move into the actual teaching part about Jesus and his role as a person and a prophet and a God, but also for ourselves, how do we anchor in to that understanding? And so I thought two things. What about it? What do you need to focus on to make that gift grow, which is really part of your responsibility here, I think. And then what do you need to do to develop your own personal attributes so that you function at a higher level on the spiritual sense? You know, some of you online know me well enough to know that there was a time in my life, yesterday, when I'd have a quick flash temper. And that really that's not in my best interest. It certainly wasn't in my children's best interest. And it's not in my best interest in the world. So as opposed to allowing myself to get annoyed in the checkout line, I say to the guy in front of me, God, that's a really nice shirt. Was it a gift? And the guy's, you know, maybe he goes, it's my shirt, you know, and that's not what he's interested in. But often people are as bored in the checkout line as I am, and they say, you know, oh yeah, my daughter gave me this shirt for Father's Day 2 years ago. And it's just something I had to develop in myself to say, try not to get annoyed as the first pass. Try to find something to distract yourself with, or to make sure that, you know, if you're under attack, then, you know, all guns up. Sorry, honey, that's me. But if it's not an attack, if it's an annoyance, that's altogether different, and you can work with that. And so I'm interested both in those of you who have gifts, and I just, as Corey read me the name, I thought of all the teaching that Richard has done, all the readings and healings that Lynn has done, all of the things that Bea has seen, both from working in business and being such a high spiritual person. People that are out there have things to share with us too, but I'm going to start with you, Janet. I've always seen music as your gift. How do you use it? And I know how you use it in helping people to transition to a different place. How do you use it as a gift to get you to a place where you can be open to, or do you use it that way?
Oh, absolutely, Mary. And I thank you for asking me that question because it really inspires in me to really go back to those roots of how I used to use music. And sometimes I can get too busy or too distracted to not do that for myself.
Uh-huh.
And so a lot of what music gives to me, it's like I feel a physical opening in my body,
Uh-huh.
and I feel like there's a channel that happens, and it comes down and through my heart and then back up through my throat.
Wow.
It's actually an energy river that I feel when I'm open to it, and I never really know what's going to come out. I don't.
Uh-huh.
And I have to get out of my own way. I can't overthink it.
Uh-huh.
But just allowing the tones or the words or whatever wants to come out
Wow.
to come out. And it was very interesting because the VTA building, as many of you know, the VTA, work family went through an incredibly horrific shooting, and we're coming across the year anniversary. And where most of the shooting happened, it was in a particular building, and they are going to demolish the building.
Wow.
And so we have been helping people go through the building to say their last final goodbyes. And I was there alone for about an hour, and it just came to me, I need to tone for this building and for the earth beneath the building. And so I just walked back and forth, and it's a huge building. It's like a huge warehouse. And as I was toning, I could feel the vibration of the building responding.
Wow.
And it was like, I'm so glad that I shut up for a minute and listened. This is why I have this time where there are no people.
Uh-huh.
So I can do this at this moment in time. So a lot of that for me is trusting that river of energy and that it will come out in what is best needed for healing at that time.
Wow.
And so just flowing with it, and I felt so much better. I felt energized, I felt renewed, I felt in the present moment, and I felt like the building was saying thank you.
Wow.
Thank you for
Very
making this.
powerful, Janet. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it made me think, for me, even though Tom and I have been married 50 years this year, and I've been a student minister for probably 40 of those, and I still have to consciously pay attention because the bigger the problem, the less likely I am to use my best tools. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but if it's a really big problem, when we lost both our children separately to a health condition, and when that was happening and when it was just over, you think I'd be meditating and praying and chanting it. No, I was cleaning and running and doing things to run away from the pain of it, rather than saying I have tools and I have people that will welcome them and that will help us. And so I had to really work with, and I was gifted enough to have friends who would say to me, let's just sit and meditate for just a couple minutes, because I couldn't do it for a long time. And when I think, I don't know, I'd be interested in people's thoughts, but I think sometimes when the outside pressure is so big, we resort to the tools that we developed when we were first stepping off mama's lap and out into the world. And then, your innate personality gives you a set of tools that might not be the best tools to be using when you're in a difficult situation, but they're the ones that come to the forefront. I don't know if other people, Richard, how did you handle that? You had such a challenge. I saw your letter, but I wondered if you might have even a couple more words to share with all of us. Richard, did we lose him?
No, I had.
No,
asked
I'm
him to
here.
mute.
I'm here. What's the
Hi,
question?
Richard. All right.
Can you hear me?
Can't hear you. I didn't think so. We didn't set up for a speaker.
I'm
We only
here.
set up for a microphone.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. That's all
I'm
right.
here. I'm here. Hello?
Richard, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
I'm sorry, guys. Richard?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I can't hear you,
I can hear you.
and he's still trying to talk.
Doggone it.
I'm sorry, you didn't tell me. I didn't bring a speaker. How you doing, Richard? No good still.
Doing okay.
Let me see if I go in this way.
I can certainly hear him just fine.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so all of us on
Just a
Zoom
minute.
can hear you,
Wait a
Richard,
minute.
so we can hear you fine.
Right there.
on
Good to
Zoom.
see
Okay,
you.
let's go on to somebody else and,
It doesn't matter. Anybody on the thing does.
Oh.
It's hard for them.
I'm so sorry. I can hear you just
So-
fine.
Yeah, I can hear you, Richard, too.
I'm gonna go join a meeting. Join.
It's great to see you,
I
Richard.
think
Give me a
everyone
second,
on
I
Zoom
get
can hear
going on
Richard.
the phone.
Okay.
The problem isn't on Richard's side. It's,
well, let us all send energy.
we're all
and
hearing
the
him
perfect
just fine.
resolution to
We can-
this
we can hear
right
you.
now.
Amen.
Let us call upon
Okay.
it.
Tools.
Tools.
Okay, so what was the question?
I was just interested if he would be comfortable sharing some of his experience and some of the tools that he used in such a challenging moment in his life when he was so ill.
It was a very big challenge being in an ICU, only seeing doctors and nurses for almost a month in a hospital in Puerto Vallarta, sorry. And so I prayed and I meditated every single day. Physical health, that my lungs and my body was pure and healthy. I worked with my guides and masters continuously. As I said in my letter, I did two main things. One was I completely surrendered to God's will. If this was it, then okay, I have to go on to the next act. Or if you have more to do. And the second thing I did is I was ferocious in my faith. I kept my and faith means you have no idea what's going to happen next, but you have to trust. You have to
Wow.
that everything works out. And I'm still in recovery to this day. I still have a hospital bed in my home and a wound vacuum because I had pressure sores from being in the hospital in Mexico. But you know what? I'm healthy. My attitude is good. I have my beloved wife who looks after me, and I'm in a state of gratitude. Every day I endeavor to be in gratitude for my skills. As Mary said earlier, we each come in with certain skill sets that we're blessed with, and it's up to us what to do with it and how to go about doing it in the most helpful way to serve. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, how it works for me and continues to be so.
Well, Richard, thank you so much. That's certainly a wonderful nutshell. The concept of holding on to your faith with the understanding, and I hear it too. Sometimes I think, can I let go, God, and have faith? I'd like to give you a checklist. I keep one for Tom at all times, but he just God pays as much attention to it as Tom does, But that's just a wonderful reminder. It was a wonderful reminder, Richard, of the power of faith. To think about being in a foreign country, even a foreign country in which you have some language skills.
Yeah.
There's a difference between asking for a tostada and trying to figure out what they're talking to you about a medical problem that you're dealing with. I was so moved when I read your letter that I just wanted another opportunity for people to hear the power of what your belief and your faith did to help you to come through that challenging time. So I thank you for sharing it with us.
Of course,
And,
of course.
And I hope we'll have more opportunities at UCM to learn from you what you have done with this. So
without the illness.
yes, talking about the past illness, right? Right. Well
Right.
said. Well, we love you, Richard, and thank you again for doing that. Is there anyone else who
We
would
do
like-
love you and admire you, Richard.
Well, thank you. I love you guys. No, I give the floor back to Tom and Mary and hear more.
Well, it is love that looks
The same way and encourages us in our activities as we work through problems that life presents us, including the challenges of health.
Yes. Is there anyone else, or should we move on? We'll just move on.
What is the question?
One of
Mary?
the things I used to say to God, I have a lot of one-way chats with God, and I said, we kind of have an agreement. This is what I want to accomplish. You know what I want to accomplish. Why can't you just tell me what to do next? And a message I got was, the Spirit can't tell us what to do next. They can pray for us, they can inspire us, but they can't, because I think we have no idea how immense the spirit world is. And so if every do-good, well-intentioned spirit passing by said, Mary, why don't you make cookies tonight? Or, Mary, drop to your knees and pray a rosary. Or Mary, pretty soon you would do nothing but try and figure out what voices you were hearing. And so Spirit cannot tell us what to do. Spirit can inspire us if we ask for that inspiration. But Spirit is not going to say, Mary, do the dishes, or Mary, say a rosary. It doesn't work quite that way. So we have to agree to that and say, okay, I want to do the right thing, and I will ask you to help me to know what is the right thing to do in that. But there's not going to be any, Mary, go over to the other room and open the book. No, it doesn't work that way. And I don't think it will. Do you agree?
So you have to sign a new contract?
Well, we never thought of that for our 50th anniversary.
No, that's true.
We could renew the whole
Well,
thing.
we were talking about wedding proposals today, and you said, I never asked you.
Uh-huh.
Will you marry me?
Yes, I'd love to
Oh,
marry you. I think it
wonderful.
would give me years of the most enjoyable life I could have ever
Oh,
imagined.
fantastic. Me too.
Oh, good.
Well,
Well,
you could say that
and
sounds
so
like
it
a good
is.
country song, but both of those, the marriage.
So what
proposal
about, well,
country song.
so I did some thoughts on it. In fact, I wrote a paper on energy, and if people want it, they can just send me an email and I'll send them a copy of the paper. I'm not going to read it to you because you would have all, well, it's hard to listen to somebody read. But some things happen so that energy gets stuck inside us and doesn't feel like something we can put to work for us. And so what happens to that spiritual energy that we try to bring in? And one of the things that happens is if we don't trust ourselves, if we're insecure about, what's the next step? How am I going to know the next step? The energy can only hover so long, and then I think it dissipates. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We didn't have time to rehearse this. So
We
feel
haven't
free
had time
to
to rehearse a lot of things in life.
That's true. Procrastination is a challenge to energy because energy begins to leak away. You can only hold it for a period of time. If you don't put it to work, it starts to leak away. And with procrastination, it usually leaks away so that you don't have enough left to put it to work. And then another one that I think is a reality for dealing with energy is that abuse is a cavern for holding energy. If you have been abused, I think, and especially anyone who was abused as a child, inside yourself you created a safe cavern where you could retreat from whatever was going on. And if you, even substance abuse, we're a good Irish family, so we have some of that in our family. And what happens is that substance abuse is often the same thing, trying to create a retreat away from the pain of what's going on that you don't know what to do with. And sometimes as we mature and we begin to be able to handle things that were abusive when we were young, we seal it off. We seal off the cavern. And then you have a big secret-filled, energy-trapped cavern that it takes other energy to hold the door shut. So if you're trying to hold the pain or the abuse or the whatever it is inside, rather than finding a safe way of sharing it and dissipating some of it, it takes a huge amount of your personal energy to do that. So I think that's all I want to say about that.
Okay.
I had them whole, all conversation till the end because of feedback.
Uh-huh.
So we can go back to it later, or I just concerned about the feedback, so I'm just letting you know if you do want to interrupt, and I put someone, you want to ask me a question, I will, have to switch things around real quick, okay?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
kind of. I'm sure when as it flows, it'll make perfect sense.
Okay.
So,
Sorry.
oh, no, don't be sorry. I could barely turn that thing on, let alone run it. And so what? Was there someone who had a question?
Lynn had wanted to speak earlier, but we had already moved on. I told them all, to wait unless you want to interrupt.
Yeah, sure. I think I'm at a pausing place, so let's hear what Lynn had to say.
Okay. Lynn, hold on. Lynn, hold on.
We have to push all the right buttons.
Okay.
Well, I guess the universe doesn't want us to do that. Ha ha ha.
So I gotta plug this back in.
Okay.
If she can, write it in the chat. We can read it.
I know. She said yes. Okay, go ahead, Mary, go ahead.
Sure. One of the things that we wanted to talk about, and our goal, we'll probably wrap up today by 7:30. So I'd like to go ahead and move to what was the scheduled discussion, which was Jesus a God? Was Jesus a prophet? Was Jesus just another folk? And I think if we just revisit in our mind that Jesus was born a Jew, and he studied with in the temple, and he studied with rabbis. His family was active, loving Jewish people, and that his teachings, as they began to evolve personally, were really about your behavior. He wanted you to be kinder to each other. And he didn't care if you were a Jew or a Gentile or a Samaritan or anybody else. And in those years, Jesus never said he was a God. I mean, I think some beliefs, and people have a right to their own belief. I'm not making a judgment on them, but I probably will comment on where I am with those beliefs. But some people believe Jesus was born a God. Well, I think Jesus was probably born a pretty highly developed human being. But I think if Jesus came in as a God and did everything he did as a God, then that makes it pretty hard for us to think we could do it. At least me, anyway. I'm not quite God material yet. And so I don't think that there's a large group that feels as though Jesus was born a God. There are a lot of people that think he became a God, particularly after the crucifixion and resurrection. And I think it's interesting, as I was reading it, and I was exhausting. I brought even some of the books I looked at, and then I lost them. Why, here they are. Thank you, Janet. One is called The God of Love. That's a story that was written by Mirabai Starr, and she's a wonderful woman, inspirational translator, teacher, lover. This book, God of Love, is a guide to the heart of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And so she talks to it in a very loving way. I also, earlier on, read Karen Armstrong. That's a great book if you want it, a book to review. And then I took a course online, How Jesus Became God. The course is taught by Professor Bart Ehrlman from the North Carolina University. He was a big deal in North Carolina, and as most of you know, we were there for several years. And he was a minister for a while, was he not? And then he left his ministry because he questioned, and he has done several classes at the great courses. You get those in the mail all the time. They say $24 special. You can take this class on XYZ. But it was very interesting to read it and to see the analytical research on whether Jesus was a God, or were there other explanations. And if you start with his appearance after his death, as metaphysical people, first of all, as metaphysical people, and I think most of the people on the line are metaphysical also, we believe that there's life after death. I mean, that's a basic tenet of ours. We believe, and most of us believe in multiple lives. So apostles who quoted his as saying he'd been alive before and he was be alive after, that's pretty metaphysical. That's not an unusual teaching. It's something we all integrate at some level. The other thing is, after his death, he was unable to eat. And those of us who have connected with family, particularly in spirit, my son said to me in a reading once early on, eat while you're down there, Mom, because there's nothing up here. It's like, he said, you have a spirit body, you don't have a human body, and so you don't stuff it with chocolate, and so I said, I do my best. I'll eat as much as I can. No, I don't. Try not to do that. But so that was affirming to me that he had transitioned, but was given the gift of being able to make himself visible to his followers so that the apostles could be inspired enough to do the work. And so he could come through doors without opening them, and we know that spirits do that. We know that spirits don't eat. My son said so, and he's never wrong, not in all the 38 years he lived here. And he could communicate, and we believe that spirits can communicate. Now, he could communicate incredibly well when he was in body here. And he also communicated at a very high level when he was in spirit, communicated to his followers, his apostles particularly. So I found that an interesting reminder to those of us who believe in metaphysics that you don't have to be a god to do some of those things. You just have to work and be a developed human being. And that then I did what I considered an interesting thing. I Googled God. And I said, can you define God for me, Mr. Google? And it was interesting what they said. What they had done is gone to grab it from different places, and then it's an omnipotent, can make changes. There's several.
Excuse me.
Sure. Do you want some water? Okay, it's right down there if you do.
Thank you.
I think we don't know what God is. We create something to keep our mind quiet. There was a time in Catholicism in which those that be the higher people were spending a lot of time talking about how many angels were on the head of a pin, that sort of thing. Things that I wasn't sure you could do much with once you figured it out, and wouldn't know how the hell you'd validate it in the second place. So I think if you search too heavily for the esoteric things, I'd really love to have you jump in here because you haven't heard any of his thoughts before. But my personal concern is that if I allowed my mind to search for all the esoteric things about God I could think up, I wouldn't ever get the dishes done. It's just that's not the answer. I think it's nice and important for me anyway to believe that there's a God beyond my understanding. That there's there's something bigger than Phil. If you ever heard that joke, but I think we have to not get trapped in endless esoteric searches for information that won't change our behavior. And so I think that Jesus managed his behavior pretty well. He did healings. Other people have done healings. People online and here in this room have done healings. So that's not a separating item between God and, we can do healings. We can't do healings as God can do healings. That's like saying the third grader could play baseball with a freshman in high school, but the skill set's a little different, But that doesn't mean we don't practice those skills. That's part of the thing that drew me to this church, our church, is that we have that encouragement and ability to utilize spiritual skills that impact the world. That was one of the things that was so impressive 52 years ago is when I would have a headache and you would say, oh, okay. And then you'd be smiling at me, and then pretty soon my headache would be gone. And I finally got smart enough to say, did you do that? And he said, well, I certainly sent you some healing, blah, 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 blah. And, but my headache was gone. And then I began to realize that there are things, if you, in a loving, compassionate, God-centered environment, which is what we try and create when we bring our groups together, you can make a difference using skills that other people don't commonly utilize. Doesn't mean they don't have them. They can very well have them, but they may not utilize them as we encourage each other to utilize. Our granddaughter has been living with us. She graduates from college on the 26th. And she hit a wrong button, and her final paper that was 46 pages long disappeared into the world of. So she's madly locked herself up in a library, has to recreate that whole paper. Some of it she had notes on, and some of it were things she developed and sent. And it was interesting that she came home last night and went to her grandfather and said, my head hurts so bad I can't do anything anymore. Can you help me? And of course he did. But that someone who was not a churchgoer, was not a believer in anything, is to the place in their life where they realize that someone can intervene for them. And I think that that's what we become, as interveners to improve the immediate circumstance of somebody. Kathy does it with her massage. That, and that's not got much to do with whether Jesus was God or not, except that I'm saying he was a greater manifestation of what we can do from the third grade viewpoint. And he's in graduating college, and so what he does is dramatically different, but that doesn't mean we can't do it. Is there a question?
Actually, there's two comments from Lynn. The Edgar Casey reading suggests that Jesus was the man, Christ the messenger in all ages. And B said, I believe the Christ consciousness is not a person, but an energy accessible to all. Jesus embodied the Christ energy to show us that we could do the same.
Yay.
Wonderful.
Good.
Wonderful.
Yes, please, all of you, send your little notes to Corey so that we can share in your experience, because I believe that particularly with this well-intentioned group, that everybody here would, if you ask them, could you help, that people would help, because that's in their hearts. And so I think we can have wonderful learnings from each other. Thank you both, Lynn and B. Kathy?
Also, just reflecting upon what Janet said, that when we get out of our own way, that was something that I really flashed upon, because we can have an intention, but that doesn't mean that we have to try to run the show. If we can let go and just be open and allow it to come through, which that's things that I've learned, and in Richard's class that we did, to me, that was a very important lesson, that we get out of our own way and allow the spirit energy to move through us, to work with us, and to work with the people we were working with in the healing situation.
Absolutely. Wonderful. And one more reminder, Richard, of all of the power that your teachings do for all of us when we have an opportunity. Tom and I study with Richard too, and he's just a wonderful, wonderful teacher.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
where are we with that? I think that one of the things that happened is that Jesus never thought you had to believe as he believed. Jesus didn't say, if you don't, this is truth. Write it down, because if you don't and you screw it up, you're out. You're out of the club. That was not how Jesus taught. Jesus allowed people to come to their own understanding. Don't you think you can talk about this better than I? You're the man who took the phone away from me at 2 a.m. I think we just have to accept people at the level they are. And sometimes just talking to the guy in the line at the grocery store about his nice shirt allows a break that says, people care about people. I'm sure every person on this evening in this material has been touched by what goes on in Ukraine. And we have an altar at home with a little blue and yellow and the eggs that the Ukrainians used to paint and sell, the wooden eggs. And all we can do for them is to send them the loving energy, because that allows the loving energy to come through at an even higher vibration from the other side of the veil. And we can live our lives at the highest, most loving, self-caring way. Because if we don't, if we allow ourselves to be depressed and drugged down and overwhelmed by the overwhelming things that are happening to them, we don't have that energy to send them. And so the best thing that we can do is to send that energy. It was interesting to me that as I studied the Jesus teachings and as I studied the evolution of Christianity, that the first 100 years of Christianity, it was called the apostolic Christianity, because the people who were taught, the people who acted on their teachings were people who were influenced by the apostles who had traveled with Jesus and were so moved by the force of his being. And after that, Paul was horse or the 10 feet in front of him or whatever struck with lightning, and Jesus said to Paul that your job is to go gather in the Gentiles. That's us, folks. And so he did that. Paul did that, and then Paul, the Jews felt as though it was Peter and James that were teaching in Jerusalem and in Judea. And the Jews felt as though they were too heavily focused on Jesus and not focused enough on God, and so they began to push back on them. And so ultimately what happened is that Christianity grew far more rapidly in Rome than it did in Jerusalem. And so first Paul, who was a Roman citizen, went to Rome. And he went there, told that he would be under house arrest. So he got a really big house, and he had a nice yard, and said, I'll stay here, and people can come to me. And he continued his teachings. And then the other apostles some migrated to Rome, some went to places like Turkey and other Middle Eastern countries, which have escaped my aging mind right now. But that they traveled and taught, and then many went to Rome. And the Romans, first in the slave community, the words of Jesus to a slave community had to be life-changing. The assurance of unending love from a creator to his children, the assurance that there was more to life than this experience. All of those things must have just been, at the risk of being redundant, life-changing. When you hear those and you're of that, and then as people saw the happiness in people who had otherwise been so wretched, other people began to move into the beliefs. And so there was a period between 100 and 200 where it was a mix between apostolic Christianity and the Roman Christianity. And then ultimately, Jesus, I forgot the name. The guy who changed Rome. I have to look at my notes. I'm so sorry, but
Alexander, Corinthians.
it started with a C.
No,
Constantine.
Constantine.
Sorry, folks.
Yep.
That's why
I knew
old
it was a
ladies have
C.
notes. Yeah, so they can.
Problem.
So as Constantine had experiences that made him become a Christian, he decided that the church was too loose, too flexible, too everything. So he called the Council of Nicaea. And it was in that time in which he created a hierarchy, like the Roman army. He was a general in the Roman army. So he said, well, we'll just organize this church like the Roman army, and then it will be far more efficient. And, in the army, as they say, that's why I got back in the car and never enlisted. No matter who tells you, if they're above you and they're in charge of you to do something, you have to do it. Those are the military rules, and I'm sure it works very well in the military. Not so sure it works very well in the religious, spiritual, personal growth of each individual. So the Council of Nicaea did create a structure and did approve dogma, because if you're going to have people follow the rules, you have to have the stable list of rules. And so that meant the loss of teachings, I think, that Constantine thought were too, what we would probably call esoteric, teachings of Mary Magdalene, teachings of Thomas. Not you, darling, your teachings are perfect, but so those were then ordered to be discarded, because that's the military way. If you're in, you're in, and if it's out, it's no good, it's out. You can't have it sitting around to see if you'll think about it later. And so all of that happened. And then the church first became determined that they could tell you what to believe. And then they began to develop consequences for failing to believe it, or for sinning, so to speak. And they had I just went blank. Could you step in and bail me out and tell me what I was thinking?
No.
Then they created consequence. They amassed money because they said people should give to the church, and then I remember being a good little Catholic girl having two baskets. One was for the church, supporting the church you were staying with, and one was for missionary work or for this or for that. Second round of second baskets. So now even there's still, I think, more money in churches than should be in churches, and more decisions based on financial impact as opposed to spiritual impact. And I think that's one of the things we always have to guard against. And what happened was, as the church got more money, I'm concerned, because I don't mean this to be an anti-Catholic talk. It just happens to be where I studied today, and based on my history and where I've studied before, the church began to sell indulgences. In other words, if you haven't, we know what a wild thing you are, Mike. So if you want to keep on being wild, you just give us a little money, and we'll have some nun in Poughkeepsie pray for you, and then you'll be all right.
I went to a Jesuit high school.
You knew about those tricks. So, and it just got worse. And so people were getting angrier and angrier with the behavior of the church. And, I don't know if you saw the thing on television, I had, which pope it was that was Italian, of course. They were all Italian until much recent times. And he had a special room built at the papacy for his mistress. I said, now, excuse me, is that really happened? But it really happened, and so if the focus is on your administrative skills and not on your spiritual observations of need and growth for yourself, it's very hard not to be corrupted. I suppose that's the devil making me not able to talk. That's what my mother would say. So what happened is, as they became more worldly focused, not just on money, they got involved in the politics of Europe, particularly. That's where the church started, grew, and was very focused. And then it was about 1200 or 1500 that when, I can't remember when Martin Luther nailed to the door,
Just
straighten
around
up,
six-
folks, and these are the rules.
Around 1600.
Yes. And they were furious, so they excommunicated him. So he left and took a hunk of people with him, and that's how it continued in the time of Protestant tied to protesters. Protestant religions began to develop, is that they could no longer agree with what was going on in Rome, and it took Rome a long time to come to grips with that and turn themselves around. And I do believe that part of it was the lure of power. If you have power is a dangerously addicting thing, and you begin to justify your choices based on the perception and misperception of the powerful have a right to do that, because you wouldn't be powerful unless you were better than. And so I think those are all things that happen to Christianity. And the further into a complex, away from the teacher Christianity that developed, the more those people began to inflate the understanding of Jesus to make him a god. That was a whole thing that happened. And the Protestants didn't want to say he wasn't a god, but they had their own separate belief systems, and they were tied then to the interpretation that Jesus was a god. And I think one of the things that spiritualism, when it first came out, was viewed as a very dangerous, evil practice. Because what happens in spiritualism, I believe, is that you move beyond the power of just this world. Spiritualists believe there are people other places, and those people are good people, and that even people who weren't so good here get better there. If you, what is the name of Sherry Dillard's book on? Do you
She's
remember
reading
it? Huh?
Mhm.
You're reading it.
We are still here.
Yes, that talks about, Sherry Dillard is a wonderful, intuitive psychic who has written many, many books, all of which I recommend. But this book that says We Are Still Here reinforces the ability to communicate with people on the other side, particularly people that you had a lovely relationship with. And I have, since reading the book, have had a more comfortable relationship with my children on the other side. And the balancing wheel is that you can't have the kids home every day and have them have their own spiritual life and get things done. So you have to decide, when do we outreach and when do we leave them be, because we know that there's work done on the other side also. I think I'm going to stop.
Yeah. You could-
Would you like to say something?
Well, I think you're saying it very well. I don't think we need to just, open end this.
Okay.
So we can wrap it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you like to say a rappy kind of thing?
Yeah. I think when we look for answers like this for these kinds of spiritual questions, we find them. And in the discussion of it, even if we don't hit the nail exactly on the head, we understand what the target area is perhaps better, and we understand choices better. I think it's a really positive way to approach a problem or a spiritual question. And I think we know that we change our thoughts in our minds. So we don't always have the same attitude or opinion regarding the same question. And that's a good thing. So we're not just, it's not just in concrete. We have the flexibility to make changes as we go along. I think we've shown that in part by the discussions that we've had this evening. That's a wholesome thing. So it was an absolute delight being with everybody. And we hope that if you have comments about what you heard us say and the things that we discussed tonight, that you'll drop us a note to headquarters, and we'll love to hear from you.
And if you want that copy of the paper on energy, developing your energy gifts, just let us know and we'll send it. And were there any notes that people sent, any questions people had?
Not at this time, I haven't seen anything.
Okay.
Okay, if anybody have anything they want to say, please type in the chat. I'm afraid if I try to let you speak again, it'll just blow our eardrums out.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'll know to bring the microphone, the speaker next time.
Right.
Oh.
They're two different systems. So.
Okay.
Well, the talk changed hourly, not even daily, so it was hard to.
That's okay. You gotta remember, I am married to Janet. She changes every minute, so it's okay. And she's entitled because she's a Gemini.
And we're all flexitarians.
And Kathy said we're all flexitarians. I like that one even better.
Oh, yeah.
Gemini.
Flexitarians.
So thank you, everyone, and
Yes,
good night.
thank you for coming and staying with us, and I hope it was of some support and value.
Wait, just a minute, Janet, let me move you. I do have a comment back from Patty and Joyce. It said, thank you very much for the very interesting talk. It was insightful and gave new ways to approach whatever is considered to be religion or spirituality. Lynn said, fine talk reminding us of our real purpose within esoteric or mystical Christianity. B said, thank you, Tom and Mary. I joined the UCM ministry because Tom embodies the Christ consciousness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yay.
And so take this loving energy and bring it forth and join us for our monthly UCM educational series. We have the opportunity to open up these deep conversations and to participate with each other in this wisdom sharing time. Thank you, and know that you can make a donation to our Universal Church of the Master, and we would lovingly and gratefully accept it. Thank you, and have an amazing, wonderful day.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Richard said, thank you for your wonderful insights. Everyone, I'm going to be closing the meeting now. If anybody has anything, I'll give you a minute. Patty and Joyce said, thank you, Janet. Everyone good? I can see on the screen. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and really appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Janet, for the music.
Yes.